Hello, everyone. It's me, Anderson West, aka Films by W, and I'm here with my friend
That camera nerd.
Mark Kachevsky, and we're back for an episode of Help. I'm a Camera Nerd. It's been a little while. We actually had recorded another podcast, but we'll explain why we kind of scrapped that, and now we're just coming straight back in with some of the crazy announcements. Let's say crazy, some exciting announcements from Blackmagic for NAB 2024 and some other news we'll try and talk about. But Mark, let's get straight into it. We got a lot to talk about. We've been talking about this offline
Yeah, we have.
for a little while.
Forever, it feels like.
So it does feel like forever. So this Pyxis 6K, what is this even mean?
Well, I mean, this is Blackmagic's box camera that we've all been speaking about for probably over a year. I even think we've been speaking about this. I feel like the internet's been crying out for the box camera from Blackmagic for a long time. And this is like their first body refresh since the Pocket 6K, which was, I think, probably like 2019, maybe 2020. So it's been, like 4 years since they've done any kind of refresh. And then before that, it was the Ursa. And this is like what would you say it is? It's a small box camera. It's got a screen on the side. It's probably, comparable in size to something like the Komodo. I think it's slightly bigger than the Komodo, but probably on a similar vein to something like the Mavo. Probably close to if you had the bare bones FX6. It's the box camera.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I think that's a good comparison. Like if you had an FX6 without the top handle, this box that is, it's got everything on there in terms of it's got one XLR, mini XLR, and one 3.5 jack, SDI out. Which is great. Only one SDI out cable. We could talk about whether that's the drawbacks of that, but obviously it's not any HDMI anymore. It's L mount. They're having three different products. We've got I'm looking at the Blackmagic page here for the Pyxis. It's three different mounts: the locking EF, PL, and L mount. We'll talk a little bit why. Which one we think, and I think I know which one I'm going to get. I think it's a really, obviously, just also talk about the Ursa Cine really quickly. What an incredible bit of technology they're doing there. I think LF, large format, the 12K, and again, 12K isn't what they're trying to get across. It's just the way their pixel technology works. 12K is a good acquisition size, but actually 8K will probably be the sweet spot for that camera. Full 3x2 open gate sensor, can crop in to do S35. Those are variants of the anamorphics, because obviously that's people, now the anamorphic filming is becoming more accessible. Yeah. People want that option. That camera looks incredible. That is literally them throwing, swinging for the fences, saying, hey, we're going after the Alexa 35's audience, the Sony Venice's audience, the V Raptor's audience, user base. We'll see if they succeed. I know, obviously, the industry can be conservative at times. With people saying, okay, we don't want to test something out on a $20-30 million project. Oh, let's try out this camera system. No, it's not going to happen. Or maybe it will. I'd love to use one, but it's out of my price range in terms of the owner of it. For now, and it's obviously quite big. It's quite. I'm trying to get away from that. But in terms of technology, I'd love to have a film shot on one of them. That looks incredible. Was it 16 stops dynamic range that they're claiming?
That's what they say.
You always think that with a grain of salt, anyway. But it just looks really exciting camera. But it's big. It's bigger than a normal Ursa. I think they extended the size out by like an inch.
Well, it's got the extra screen as well, hasn't it, on the side? So that you've got, I guess that's there. Seems positioned for a focus puller, doesn't it? If you're going to stand on that, who's going to stand on that side of the camera? Usually, if you're not wireless, it would be the focus puller. Or the camera assist, I guess, so they can change the settings for you or whatever they're, So it's because then you've also got the flip out screen, right, that can then fold back in on itself as well.
Yeah.
So 2 screens there. It's almost like they've gone back to the big Ursa, and they're trying to implement some of the design features that they had on that very first Ursa, which maybe what they were aiming for with that first Ursa they didn't quite get, and now they feel like after they've spent years kind of establishing their camera brand, that they're going to go back and have another challenge, because it certainly doesn't feel as much like the camera for an owner operator like me, for instance. I know you said they've got the different card options coming out, but that sort of data backup that it's showing you, that's not something that necessarily is going to be as easy to do on a shoot as something like a normal SD card, a CFast Express would be, or something like that. They're much bigger, I'm probably more expensive, but it's a
bit like Infinity, isn't it? Really, with the built-in memory card that is its own system, proprietary. But like you said, they're gonna have, so we're talking about this new module that they have that has like 8 terabyte of space. But and I was watching one of the interviews, I think from Cine D or New Shooter, and they're gonna have a module where the existing media pops out, and then you could put in a module that allows you to have CFast Express Type B, CF Express Type B, and that's really interesting. They're like, oh, it's gonna limit, obviously different type resolutions. But again, for me, when I had a project done for me, shot for me on the Ursa 12K. I mean, you edited that project, actually. Ben Halford Films, shout out to Ben. He shot it, and he shot on the Ursa 12K. We didn't shoot in 12K, we shot in 8K. And I thought that the image looked beautiful, had great performance in terms of we had got some real amazing slow motion. So I think it's like, it is an option, if you're just only going to have only 8K. It's like, most people don't need 12K. And again, it's like this camera, another thing about it is shooting only in RAW, but it doesn't, when you downscale your resolution, like I'm doing this because I'm, already visualizing it. When you downscale your resolution from 12K to even 4K, it doesn't crop into the sensor, which all other RAW cameras do. It keeps the same field of view and just does whatever downsampling they do to get that image in there. But it reads off the sensor faster, because Blackmagic did this wonderful on their forums. Their engineers post the readout speed of every sensor. And with the Ursa 12K, like in 12K, it has like a 12 millisecond readout or whatever, 12 milli whatever, which is still very good. But then when you go to 8K, again, it doesn't crop into the sensor. It goes down to like 6 millisecond. So it's like they're using the same technology, so you presume it's going to have the same performance. So again, if you never shoot an 8K in that camera, if you never shoot in 12K in that camera, it's probably still going to be incredible for you, even if you never shoot 12K. But again, they're giving that options. And what lenses can resolve 12K anyway at the moment? I'm not sure how many can do that, but really exciting camera. Really exciting camera.
It is an exciting camera, but I am more excited about the Pyxis 6K just because it's more affordable, like smaller. Yeah, it just... What do you think? Let's kind of break it down and go through it. Body. What do you think of the body?
Well, I think the body is what... why do we want a box camera? Why do we want a camera in this rectangular or square shape? It's because we want to be able to outfit it in the way we want it. We want to not mod it, but build it out in the way we want to. The 6K, when you got because you had the 6K first, and then I saw the image and I was like, I love this camera. But the body wasn't ideal. It looked stupid. It was stupid. I mean, it just didn't. It was like an old DSLR shape, and it was like the screen's on the back, and then sometimes you're doing handheld when you bring the camera into you, but then you're blocking the main screen of where you need to change menu or even see the image from. And the 6K Pro, obviously with the flip out screen, they made it a little better, but like because the battery solution was so poor, you're putting sometimes a V mount on, and you're blocking the screen because most of the time you're putting the V mount behind where the
Yeah.
screen was to try and keep it compact and not super long. But then you're blocking the same screen, the same amazing 5-inch high brightness HDR screen. You're blocking it so you can get a battery on there. So you're kind of like, well, this is a bit silly. And again, a lot of people like to operate, myself included. We like to just bring it close to us. And obviously, with the screen being there, you have to have an external monitor. So I think the thing there is, it's fantastic to see an open back for the battery, and BPUs is BPUs. You can get some high wattage BPUs to like 70 or even 80 megawatts.
You can go all the way up
say.
to like 98. I think I saw one, so that's pretty hefty.
Yeah.
They get pretty long,
So
but you can get them that high.
But but the other thing as well, they're doing like a 2-pin LEMO, I think, for power. So someone will just put a V mount a modification on there. It'll be interesting how they put that on there
already,
and it not blocking the CFX.
So there's already on Amazon, like from manufacturers I've never heard of, but there are BPU to V-Lock mounts already available before this camera was announced.
Well, there you go.
So my theory is that, Tilter most likely, or Small Rig, one or the other, one followed by the other, will come out with this mount by the time June rolls around, and you'll be able to get that. And maybe even, I don't know how successful it is, like the Komodo has the mount that you can attach to the batteries, and then you can also, through that mount, if you plug it in, obviously you can add in an SDI port and stuff like that. I don't know if they'll release mounts that let you plug in certain ports, and then that could expand to give you extra features, but possibly. But either way, I'm almost certain there'll be a V-Lock mount out for this. I'm kind of shocked that Blackmagic didn't make it themselves, but it's interesting. I think the screen is really interesting, because if you look at like the Komodo, for instance, that gives you a screen on the camera, but it wouldn't necessarily advertise that that's the screen you would use to film with the Komodo. And it feels like you've got this screen on the sides, which it feels like a better option than the Komodo screen, but it's not necessarily something they're suggesting you use as your main monitor. It's in kind of an awkward place. It's mainly there for menu navigation, I think, and watching playback.
Exactly. And I think that's some of the discourse online, it's just silly placement, why doesn't it flip out? I'm like, well, the Komodos doesn't flip out. The FX6 doesn't have one. It's not meant to be operated on. There, the assumption is you're going to have that viewfinder or some sort of external monitor that you actually operate from. That side one is just for menu access. It's like the same way that's on a Alexa, it's from the side. Sony F5, F55, Venice, it's all from the side, and you can. Obviously, some of them have it on the other side or the AC side, but this has the operator side. It just so happens that they're like, well, our OS looks beautiful, and you can look at the image. Here's an image reference, but it's not meant to be for operating. Yeah. So I don't really understand the complaint about that. We're not. Are we holding Blackmagic to a higher standard than every company when they're giving it to us cheaper? I think that's what it's a bit weird that, but then again, at this price space, you wonder if people start getting a bit entitled to, it should have this, it should have that. And it's like, mate, cinema cameras have been around for years and they've never had that. And now you're trying to ask them to do like every bell and whistles for nothing. Come on. I'm not trying to make excuses. There are some, let's talk about some of the other things. Obviously we talked about the shape. It's L mount, which is great.
So 3 mounts.
It's just great.
And it seems like, there's a lot of people from the comments on the video I made. There's a varied amount of opinions there. I think it's good because it basically, if you're EF mount and that's the lenses you have, then you're just going to get an EF mount. It doesn't make sense to get a mount that you're not going to kind of rock the most amount of lenses. The L mount, for me, seems like it gives the most options in terms of you can do the L mount, which obviously with the Lumix, I have a couple of L mount lenses, but it's easy to go to PL, and I already have the L to EF adapter. So, the L mount seems like the kind of base model almost. I noticed when I was looking at the material that they released that the L mount didn't seem to have the L mount like listed on the actual picture he showed. It was just PL mount version in EF, and then it kind of just looked like the standard one. So it looks like the L mount is kind of their base model, I guess, that they which is interesting because when I was talking to Pro AV about pre-orders, it seemed like there hadn't been a lot of pre-orders of L mount, and I guess that's because it's a relatively Lumix, a kind of. Would you say they were new kids on the block a little bit? They definitely are opposed to EF
I
and
guess a
PL,
little
right?
bit. Yeah, and when you compare them to the other mirrorless mounts like E mount's quite a mature
Why no
mount.
E
Obviously,
mount?
the Sonys are very popular.
Why do
Well, it's a
you
licensing
think
thing.
so?
It's a licensing thing. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course it is because, um, you know, they were part of the L mount allowance. E mount would have made this camera incredible because some of the things we haven't talked about the lack of NDs. We'll talk about it in a second. Um, obviously E mount every manufacturer has made stuff, those adapters for that. So E mount would have been amazing, but they're part of the L mount allowance. The Cinema 6K, the one they released last year, that everyone complained about because of the size and whatnot. I mean, I've used it and you've used it, and we both have positives to say about it, as well as negatives. L mount just opens that flexibility, and because when I borrowed the Cinema 6K a few months back from Pro AV, I need to use it again to get like a bit more of an extensive review before I put my final thoughts on it. But I really like using it, and I love the Blackmagic image. It's the closest to Arri. You introduced me to it. I was like, it looks closer to Arri than the Sonys did or any of the other ones did, right? The image was great, but then the mounts, obviously EF was such an old mount, and the Ursa, I wasn't interested in the Ursa because that was quite a big camera for how I wanted to use it. Not quite big, it was big for how I wanted to use it. And I think the thing about it was when you're seeing like these Sonys with the E mount and the flexibility that's given you with different lens options, mounting it you can have a E to FD, E to PL, E to EF, and you're like, man, you're able to experiment with so many different types of lenses with those mounts, and I'm just missing out. And now with the Cinema 6K, when that came out, and that answered a lot of that, where I was filming, I was doing a funeral my friend's dad sadly passed away, and I was filming their funeral for them to be live streamed, and I was on my Sigma 24-70 EF, used a simple MC21 adapter, and then the next following day, 2 days later, when we're shooting my short film, I managed to get an L to PL adapter, and we had the DZL Pavo anamorphics on there. And I was like, wow, within like a couple of days to have that flexibility to be able to use this camera to do live streaming. And again, it talks to those A10 minis, those features, and then use it on a narrative project next to an Alexa 35. I was like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And the L mount allows for that flexibility. And again, because the because that image looks so appealing, you're really, for me, able to use it in a lot of applications that several other cameras you just wouldn't be able to use them in. And I think that's what, so it's finally they've gotten this L mount, and they're continuing with this Pyxis, which I think is great.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is. It's like you said, an incredibly flexible mount, and that's what we wanted, right? We wanted something that I guess was closer to the sensor, so that you could add on those other lens mounts for various different lenses. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it was either gonna be what could it have been? If it couldn't be the E mount, it was either gonna be the RF mount or the L mount, right? That's the two options they could have had. So, yeah, I think it's clearly they struck a deal with like Lumix and giving them Blackmagic Raw, and they in turn must have got the L mount. So yeah, I'm happy with the mount. I know that I would get the L mount just because of that flexibility, but we've talked about lenses and like eventually going PL. There's this kind of weird thing at the minute where you're like, is a thing's going to become way more, is autofocus going to pick up in these cinema cameras, and then with PL you're not going to get that. So there's a weird kind of for me anyway, it's like, well,
Well,
are we going to
well,
get autofocus? I know it says it online. I know you said that's probably pushed to autofocus, but it wouldn't surprise me if a few months down the line, in some kind of new firmware update, Blackmagic have got face tracking and all your EF lenses and your L lenses are going to become autofocus.
maybe, but
The
like
yawn while you said that.
maybe. Oh, sorry, no yawn. I wasn't bored of the question. I mean, autofocus is an interesting, debate around it. They call us snobs for saying, "Oh, you don't need autofocus," But when we came up, autofocus wasn't really. It wasn't reliable. Using it on the FX6. Sorry, it's incredible. Sometimes it's still a bit pokey in terms of certain things. I think people want to talk about it like it's this grand old just set it and run around, and that's just not the case. That is not the case. It is still a use case by use case situation. And then when those lenses aren't those fly by wire or those focus by wire lenses, if you're not using the autofocus, they're basically like not impossible to use, but they're so difficult to get focused if you're not autofocusing. That's the issue with stills glass. Now, for me, I'm not fussed about the autofocus, and I think there's really incredible tools coming out like that DJI Focus Pro, which I'd love to test out. I'll probably eventually buy something like that once I went to full PL, because I was watching another video and a guy had managed to do like single operator autofocus. Obviously, the calibration takes a little bit of time, but then once you actually calibrate it, it's fine. From what I can see. And obviously, I would need to test it myself or use it myself before I can say, oh, this is what I definitely think. But I think for me, I eventually want to go completely to PL. I've always wanted to just own PL glass, but it's been so expensive. It's been prohibitive to buy any, collect any glass. But now you're seeing all these options, DZO, Nissi with those Athenas, Laowa is making, I think they were announcing a S35 zoom range that goes like 11 to 17, 17 to 50, 50 to 175. That's incredible, and it's like that big. So it's like 100%. Those really sound, that's where you should be going instead of, get the 24 to 70 stills lens that, the image covers, but then you're like, this to this is like completely out of focus. So it's, I personally, I want to eventually move to all PL and make this camera when I get it, or just make it a PL camera with an L to PL adapter, and not worry about stills glass ever again.
So I mean, that's I think ideally, me, I've spoke to you many times about the Nissi Athenas being a great option. Currently they are out of my price range, but that's probably the way I would want to go. Zooms are appealing as well.
Nissi, send Marco, Nissi, send Marco, A for review. I think he'd give a good review.
So I think you're right, and that's they're, like you said, PL lenses generally, unless they're non 360 focus barrel versions, they're easy to pull focus on just because the barrel is spread over a greater distance, so it just gives you an easier time fine-tuning it, unlike stills lenses where it's spread out over a much shorter distance, and those micro little changes make huge differences. So let's talk, because I'm almost ridiculously excited about this, but I think I'm excited about the possibilities. But the side plate mounting, I am just so intrigued to see, not so much with the options that Blackmagic have presented, I think they're great options, but I'm just really intrigued to see what the other manufacturers are going to come out with for this camera, and what people will just make as well themselves, because they've obviously released the blueprints for it. Like, what will Tilter, Small Rig, what will they all have on the horizon? What are some things that you could implement into this? Because it's kind of crazy.
I think, beyond rigging, expanding the I/O, I think will be really interesting. Now, obviously, we don't want to make the camera loads wider, but you're going to need a handle anyway. Like, we've got away from the wide pocket. in the pocket instead of a 6K, and now we're going to go back to it. No, but like, one thing I'd love to see, because with the one SDI out, it has got that USB-C viewfinder option that eventually I imagine they'll make some sort of video assist that marries with that really well to give you that top monitor solution. But another thing I would be intrigued by, and I'd almost make one myself, to get a Blackmagic HDMI SDI splitter, and then mount that to some sort of cheese plate, as long with that, that allows me to have a handle, and then I can have that loop in, that SDI loop in, and then send 2 signals out, one to a monitor and then one to like a wireless transmitter. And it wouldn't be really fandangly, it'd still be on brand because it's Blackmagic. You could power it from the USB-C port at the back, and then you would still have the option to then move it back for some sort of wireless transmitter, and it would still not be as wide as the old 6K. I think that's something that's really interesting, for us using it on say like how we used the 6Ks on Family Ties, for instance, right, where we tried to make it work with an HDMI to SDI and 2 SDI outs. I mean, it worked, but it wasn't an ideal solution because of the HDMI. This being SDI opens that possibility. So maybe someone like Wooden Camera or Mid 49, who used to own a Wooden Camera, maybe they'll come up with some solution that just opens up the I/O a little bit more. Maybe gives you two SDI outs. Maybe gives you a full size XLR, and and still keeping the profile fairly small. Yeah. Right. It's like a clip, and in there, and then so it's not like, so it goes from like this wide to like that wide, maybe that wide, and so, which is, I think, is acceptable because it's still got the box format. That would be something that's interesting. I know they're talking about tethering your mobile phone onto it for the Blackmagic Cloud, which is interesting. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. Again, it's now a box, so we can do whatever we want with it. And it's going to be open for us to experiment.
I think what would be a really good idea is like how I have the wireless system rigged. You could almost rig up a wireless transmitter to the side, so you could go with the Hollyland or Teradek or something like that, and they always come with a loop through anyway. So you'd go into that with your SDI and then come out of it into your video assist or whatever monitor you were using. And that side plate there could be a really nice compact way of having that, wireless video module attached. But I mean, the possibilities are endless, I'd imagine, with this. And I think people were talking about a flip out screen. Who's to say that there won't be some kind of module? It's the wrong side probably, but who knows? Who knows what people will invent? Just a flip out module screen. I think with the screen, in terms of like I think that we've got to get some kind of iPhone, Android app that works with that USB-C. It would just make so much sense to be able to rig up your phone. That's like, you could already control the camera with your phone. So it makes sense to me that like, why wouldn't you use that? Why wouldn't you give us the option? They're all about saving money as well. Blackmagic are all about saving you money. Someone's got to make an app. If it can be done, like, that is just... Imagine using your phone. It'd almost be cheaper to just buy a phone than it would a screen in many scenarios. There's some phones out there with great screens that don't cost a lot of money. That's how long does a phone battery last? Long time.
Well, if it plugs into it, it'll give it power as well. So it's not, that I never even thought of that. That is a really good point, and I think it's a possibility. We've gushed about it. Let's talk about some of the things that we're not happy about. Maybe we don't want to come across as Blackmagic shills, although we will shill if they send us a free camera. I'm joking. We are not. We are impartial. We can't be bought.
There's always going to be things about a camera that you wish it had.
Dark Knight reference.
And I think there'll be a pro version of this camera. You know, my biggest thing that I wish it had was NDs, internal NDs. You know, that would have been really nice. Yeah. It's what it is, isn't it? It's the same as what they did with the Ursa. The first Ursa came out, no NDs. The second one, internal NDs. Then we've got the pocket camera, you know, no NDs. Yeah. Second one, NDs. I would bet money that the pro version of this camera that will be out in a year or two will have internal NDs.
It'll be 2 years.
Yeah.
It'll be 2 years. It'll be 2 years.
It was only one with the Ursa, you know.
The thing is,
the first Ursa, and I don't know whether that could be because the first Ursa was delayed. I think so. That could have had something to do with it. It was delayed, like behind when it was supposed to come out. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to say they're holding off on the NDs, but I mean, there's got to be, you know, it makes sense to release versions that are low costing and then release a version that either increases the cost or pushes down the cost of this one.
So essentially, it's going to replace the Ursa body for the non-Ursa Cine.
Right.
Because that's the only other option, right? That if it does have NDs and say a flip out screen, I'm not sure they should ever put the flip out screen because we don't want it to get too wide, and because it's full frame. They were saying, like, one of the I think Blackmagic sales director, I think he's a Mancunian as well, actually. Sorry, that detail doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things, but he was saying how the motorized system, there wasn't that it would have changed the body size of it. Now, if they, obviously I love the step NDs, but perhaps if they went to an END, a variable END like an FX6 that slots in, and then it increases like almost like a variable ND. And there was one company, I think they were at BSC or one of these other trade shows, and they were talking about how they had this technology and they're trying to partner with other companies. That's like what was it? It was like liquid ink or something that basically it was perfect color rendition, so no color shift, and it increased liquid crystal technology to do that. So maybe something like that, and they'll find a low cost way, because I think with the END, with the motorized ND module that steps, like it's even in the Ursa Cine, it would have just probably been too big. And that's the argument. I'll say, well, the Ursa has that, but I think eventually these will replace the Ursa. I think the Ursa non-Cine 12K Cine, because we want to see that incredible technology in the Ursa and the usability of the Ursa. We want it to be shrunk down. And I think, like, if they make a slightly, now they have the platform of this body to work from. They have the platform in which to build out and make larger. Yeah. So that's something that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I agree. It's just kind of, with NDs, it's one of those things that I'd love to have, but it's not the worst thing if a camera doesn't have it. I know we've talked about the Mavo and stuff, and you know, the higher end version of that having the NDs, and it's obviously that comes, I think, with 8K as well, which is different to the next version down. But yeah, I'm shocked.
They do 6K version, the 6K Edge, the 6K Edge. That the Kinfinities it's a cost saving exercise because there was no change in that body. And it's like, I understand it. You got to protect your higher end models, but it's like, if they, you know, like I said in my review, which you can check out here, I'm probably not going to link it, but, you know, they would have made that camera even a knockout the park if it had the END, but yeah, I understand why they left it out. I mean, it is 3,000 pounds. And I argue the 6K Pro's ND has really, you know, it hasn't managed people's expectations. There was no other camera that shoots 6K or 4K or 6K RAW that has internal ND that's under like 5,000 pounds, you know, or under 3,000 pounds, you know, at the time of the 6K Pro's release. So like, it's like it gave people like, ooh, we can get this on every camera. And it's like, well, no, not necessarily. But then again, it makes it feel like, oh well, now the product range is a bit splintered, because you have the 6K Pro that has ND, But the Cinema 6K, which is meant to be a model up, doesn't have ND, but that's full frame. Then you have the Pyxis 6K, which is full frame, more expensive than both of those two, but doesn't have ND. And then you go up to the Ursa 12K, that does have ND, and this is supposed to sit between the pockets, the Cinema 6K, and the Ursa, but it doesn't have ND. So there's a little bit of confusion there that they've got to figure out in terms of what they want to offer us as users. But I get it. You can't just, just give everything at once. They have to make money. As much as Blackmagic feels like they're out for us, they have to make money. So what can we expect?
Okay, so what else? Is there anything else that that you would have liked?
I would have loved the original 12K sensor in this camera. I would have loved for them to put that in there, and if they gave me some guff about, the cooling system isn't the same, and to make it smaller, we had to, limit it to 8K 60 frames, then that's fine. That would have been fine. Because, and I'm not going to talk about, no camera's a killer of another camera. They all have different use cases. But the camera this is going to be, for me, unfairly compared against is the Komodo X. Komodo is fine, but the Komodo X, that's Super 35, does up to, does 6K RAW, does up to, 60 frames at, or 80 frames at 6K. And then obviously it goes up and has global shutter. Now this is going to be compared, this Pyxis is going to be compared to that camera, even though this costs like a third of that camera. People are it's going to inevitably be the case. And the sensor performance, I love the look of the sensor, the large format look, the 3x2. We fell in love with it when we fell in love with that 3x2 when we both shot on the Infinity, and we love that. And this offering that is fantastic. But the sensor readout is a little bit slow to show, when I was using it on a job, the 6K, Cinema 6K, which this is based off of, I did find there was some bit of jello bits, nothing I couldn't get around, it wasn't the end of the world, but it is going to be compared to that. Now, if they had managed to put that Ursa 12K sensor and limited it to 8K, and with the readout speeds that it has in this box and form factor, the low light performance, but I don't think the Komodo X's low light performance is that great either, but the low light performance wouldn't have been great. Maybe 800, you wouldn't want to go above that. But the readout speed and the slow motion frame rates, imagine this as an 8K box that does 60 frames a second in 8K, and at Super 35. Then you could, using the same raw technology, go to 4K and it does 120 frames per second in full Super 35. Yeah. Like, you can't argue with that. Like, that's an incredible camera. You imagine, because it's Super 35 and not full frame, perhaps you could get the NDs in there. So I do wonder if eventually they'll do a Pyxis 35 or a Pyxis 8K. It does allow for that kind of product growth in that extent. And again, I don't want to wish for a camera when this camera is not even out yet. This camera is gonna really help a lot of filmmakers. I think a lot of people, quite a few people who know what they're doing, are gonna make a lot of money from this camera. And I think, but I'm just saying that would have been, for me, I would have been like, but I imagine they would have tried to do that, but they couldn't.
So let's round it up. What are you? It's difficult with this, isn't it? Because I suppose because we haven't
talked about the lack of ProRes though.
We've talked so much about the lack of ProRes, but let's talk about it.
So just let's talk about that briefly, because it's weird. Obviously, Blackmagic have moved away from Apple ProRes, but Apple ProRes, I like to call them day jobs. When you're hired out by a company, hand them the footage and you're over. You're just a, day operator. I own my own production company, so I can have jobs from beginning to end. But occasionally I have people, agencies, other production companies that hire me out for just a day to film something and to hand them the footage. Now, handing them ProRes over is much easier than handing them B-RAW. I know the proxy workflows and they give you the proxies, but I wouldn't be happy giving a client proxies to have their end product. I wouldn't be happy to do that. Yes, there's an argument that you could do that, give them the proxies, transcode ProRes for them, and then send that to them. But that's already a few too many steps. Yeah. That's one thing. And like, I don't know what's going on. Whether they've had a fallout or whether it's a licensing issue.
Because the video assist
but I do miss ProRes.
Still uses ProRes. So, and I think that's what they want you to do, right? Most people, I'd imagine, if they're buying a monitor for this thing, are probably going to buy one of the video assists, or I guess another recorder. And I guess what they're saying is, you know, you set it up, when you press record, it triggers your video assist and you record alongside. And I guess that is the solution. It is something I wish they'd kept, but yeah, they're not going back on this. And I guess it's in part to kind of get you into their ecosystem of the, you know, proxies going up to the cloud and what have you.
And bro, that's fair. I'm not going to argue with that. That is a fair thing to do. And like I said, yes, you make a great point. I mean, that's what I've already done. I've already costed up into my cost for this thing, getting a video assist that, you know, I'll just run a feed out of. And eventually, even if they come with another video assist that connects in the USB-C, you know, if they eventually, great. I'm not going to wait for it to eventually do that. I'm going to get the things that could do it now so I can start using it and putting it in my workflow and using it alongside my 6K Pro that has ProRes for those smaller jobs where I can just use it and, you know, hand the footage over to a client and then be done with it. And the other great thing is the SDI out is 2160, which is UHD, 60p out. I imagine that's a 422 signal. So whatever the video assist will be recording will be HQ 422 quality in ProRes. And you can record it in log and you can apply your LUT in the monitor, not out of the feed. And you're good to go. I think you'd be really good to go. So it's not a workaround. And again, doing that option, that only adds another 600 pounds to the camera. That's 3,600 pounds. That's still cheaper than a Komodo.
Yeah, I mean, that's an option. It's a good option. You know, external recorders, I'm using an external recorder right now just to record H.265. They're way more affordable these days. They're kind of, I guess, baked into a lot of ecosystems. I used to have the video assist as well, even with the Ursa, and I did used to record like proxies on that camera. It could have recorded, you know, all the way up to 422 HQ, I think, maybe even higher. I can't remember. They're good monitors. They're very robust, well built. My only thing is they're a bit heavy, and I'm hoping that there's a lighter solution further down the line. But yeah, there's a lot to like about this camera. I made a video about it. I'm very excited about it. I always get excited about Blackmagic cameras. They're always, you know, it goes all the way back to the Ursa.
A sequel to your why I left Blackmagic video, but like why I came back. Why I came back. Gosh.
Right.
No, they're a great solution, but we have to go because my battery's
I can see that. I've been watching your voltage drop into the red, and
voltage drop. I forgot to plug it in. So
such a camera person.
But yeah, that's a great way to end it, man. I think that should be a great one, and you know, obviously, we're looking forward to getting back into this and getting people, you know, our latest thoughts on these things. And as soon as we can get our hands on this camera, we're gonna do some sort of real like extensive
week of content. I'm gonna do a week of content. Because again, you know, my last message to everybody about this camera: look, it's a tool at the end of the day, and we have to remember Blackmagic are giving us high quality tools for like a lot, you know, a little budget. For a lot less than what traditionally it costed. They have forced everyone else to make lower, cheaper models that give you high quality solutions. So the thing is, if you can, you can spend 10 grand on this camera, whatever, great. But then you have less money to pay your crew, or you have less to get the other things you need, the lighting, the tripod, the lenses. Better you get this camera. You know, yes, you can go all out and get a Komodo X, which is an amazing camera. Or you could get a tripod, media, a set of amazing Cine Primes, even a Cine Zoom, all for the same price. So you're spending on a Komodo X.
So and a great tripod, that's key, and even a few lights in there, all for that price. So it is better to have, oh, I have a Komodo X for the sake of having a Komodo X, or you have like your full set of production gear. Think about that. So yes, you get what you pay for, people, but also make your money stretch a bit further than normal. But anyways, let's wrap it up. You do the sign out.
Okay.
You do the
All
sign
right.
out.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're going to be doing more of these now. And we've both got personal channels, so check out our personal channels, Films by AW and That Camera Nerd.
Yeah.
Don't forget to watch. All right. Signing off.
Don't forget to
Stay classy. Keep shooting.